Welcome back to the Bullpen Mafia. We are joined by a very special guest today, a very timely guest. Toad and I would love to introduce Craig Mish, contributor to Sports Grid, the Miami Herald. Obviously, Craig had a crazy day yesterday and what was a banner historic Marlins trade deadline day. I'm not sure how Craig is doing this today, but we're certainly really lucky to have him here with us today. Craig, thanks so much for joining the Mafia.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I mean, once I heard Toad was doing the show, I had to. I mean, who can turn that down?
Yeah, right. Pretty soon we're gonna replace Mish bombs with Toad bombs. Hopefully, break some trades myself. But Craig, before we get started, I'm a longtime follower on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about your growing meme culture, your cult following on Twitter that's kind of evolved over the last couple of seasons. Are you aware of I guess you have your own set of fans on Marlins Twitter?
I mean, I don't know everybody, but I feel like I have a good feeling for, the people who are on there. I try as much as I can to interact with fans. I've done that for years and years because I feel like, it's kind of like a fan site sort of. So I'm very big on the people who support me, and I want to try and answer as many questions and support them. I've always been that way. And so I don't know what's happened over the last year or two, but this sort of really started, and I've had this since the beginning, back since like 2009, since Twitter began. But really, when that one-off season where Stanton was traded and Ozuna and Yelich and all of those, I feel like that, even though I had been around the team and covered the team really on and off since the late 90s and 2000s, I mean, really, at some point I've been credentialed all the way back to like 95, 96. But I think then was, for me at least, that was like a big jumping off moment when all that happened, and I was able to break a lot of those stories because people were like, how the heck's he doing that? So I think that was a pretty big moment. Those moments were big. And
now people are on pins and needles at the edge of their seats on days like yesterday. It's not official Marlins news until Craig Mish tweets it. That's my opinion on this sort of stuff that's been going on the last couple of weeks.
I only had 2 X notifications yesterday, Jeff Passan, Craig Mish, just because I wanted to make sure I don't want any parody accounts. I don't know.
You didn't want to get fooled?
I don't want to get. If you haven't noticed, Toad is definitely the more techie savvy guy, and I am the.
You've retweeted a fake story or two before.
I always check 3 and 4 times before I retweet or anything, just to make sure I don't get parodied.
Hey, look, I mean, you never know what can happen, and there's some people that are even followers of the Marlins, and they say like they have sources and people, retweet them and stuff like that.
Even over in England, right? We got a Marlins insider.
I just talked to him a little while ago, actually.
How's he doing? How's he taking all this?
He's not taking it too well. He's not taking it too well. I'm trying to talk to him a little bit about it, trying to be pragmatic about the whole situation here. But he's put in a lot of time. He's created an incredible fan base. And it's for him, it's disappointing because of sort of the dynamic as to what's happened. And again, he's more invested, as are Marlins fans on the major league side, watching major league games. I understand that, but again, I tend to be of the opinion with this is that life is really just too short for me to be angry or look back and be upset. And I understand fans are going to be that way, but for me. And I guess it's just having the media background, even though my son is a Marlins fan. I take him to all the games. My wife enjoys going to the games. My daughter hates going to the games. But that element of I've been able to move past all of these things that have happened and sort of understand that. And I think that's what's kept me sort of even keeled.
Yeah, I think from a fan's perspective, and now a fellow member of the media, technically,
there it is.
I think that makes us appreciate your opinion a little bit more. That in sports media, especially these days, there's this bubbling up of bias that there's not a problem with showing a little bit of who your favorite team is. And I think for you, it's been great. It's been right down the middle. You don't get too high on the team. You don't get too low, and you're just being honest and you're just providing the facts.
And I'm definitely biased on some things. Okay. I definitely am.
Right.
I'm definitely, I walk a line with that. But I think the difference with me and my bias, maybe as opposed to a fan, is I'm pretty clear on where my biases are.
Right.
As a member of the media, like I'm not like trying to hide where my bias is. Through the years, I've sort of done that, and so. I really enjoy doing it monetarily. It doesn't pay a bill really in the end. Where I work with Sports Grid, and that's my primary job. It's a full-time job, and they've been honestly fantastic to me. Love doing that. The Herald has certainly helped out by me being able to do these stories, but taking financial accounting on Marlins coverage just for me through the years, it's a difficult thing to do just because of our fan base being so small. Right. So you never know. Maybe at one point this will lead into something else. You can always hope. But I've had a great time doing it. I've scaled back quite a bit. Being at the park. My son is. My daughter's about to go to University of Central Florida here. My son is a travel baseball player, and just the last couple of years, I've been like, what am I doing? Like, I really need to be there for them. So that's kind of my shift.
Most of the most important things in life, right? So
I agree.
You mentioned something that struck a chord, and you mentioned through the years. Yesterday obviously was just an absolutely crazy day for the Marlins. Where do you rank yesterday's sort of trade deadline activity and all the trade deadlines you've been a part of and witness of this Marlins franchise? What did it look like, and what did it feel like in terms of looking back on other sort of sell-offs that the Marlins have gone through?
Yeah, I was thinking of the craziest days of all time. There have been a few. The deadline days, though, look, when they dismantled the team in 1998, there was really no social media for that. So it was just kind of like finding out on TV what was going on, and just player by player when they traded, Moises Alou and Kevin Brown and all of these guys one by one. I remember it vividly. And I was in 97. I remember being, upset about that. But again, knowing it was coming, I just remember thinking, all right, well, it's on to the next chapter, so to speak, with them. So that was crazy at the time, because again, you think about winning a World Series and then trading all the players, that was crazy. Then the second one, the reminder of, was when they traded Burley and Josh Johnson and Jose Reyes, and all those guys shortly after signing them, just a few months before, right, when they moved into the new stadium. That was crazy as well. But this one was the wildest just because of the amount of trades that they made. If you remember the Blue Jays, they sent a lot of players to the Blue Jays at once. So this was just like one player after the next and after the next and after the next. So this was one of the craziest days ever. But again, I think that the day that sticks out to me the most, as far as just like remembering, aside from all the really cool things like winning World Series and playoffs and all that, was obviously when Jose Fernandez died. Yeah. That day, waking up to that piece of news and trying to get contacts on that in such disbelief for hours until it was actually confirmed. It was Andy Slater at the time. He and I mean, he's texting me at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I remember he didn't even say anything about it till like 9. So I'm sitting on this for hours thinking there's just like no way, like this just can't be true. I mean, thinking about having that information. So that to me was the most insane day ever. I don't know how to describe it, but as far as the on baseball stuff and like transactions, yes, yesterday was the craziest day.
And Craig, this sort of sell-off, I mean, you obviously have a pulse on the team. Was this something that was sort of set in stone day one of spring training? Obviously, with the hiring of Peter Bendix, made his way with the Tampa Bay Rays. It's very well noted how the Tampa Bay Rays operate. They're trying to optimize their farm system, optimize it on the cheap, get that talent up to the major league level, win games at a much lower payroll clip than some of their, even in the AL. If you look at the AL East, they're obviously at the bottom of the AL East, right? So you hire Peter Bendix. Was this sort of written in the stars? Was this the course that we were on track for, collision course the day he joined the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about collision course. I talked about this a little bit last night on social media. I don't know that a lot of people saw it just because it was late. And, I'm going to start talking about it now a little bit more. But when Peter joined the franchise and he joined the organization, I had conversations with him, a few. But he was kind enough at the time that he was hired. Shortly thereafter, I'd have to go back and look and see why. He took his own time. I took my own time, and I met with Peter, and I met with him on more than one occasion because I felt like in order for me to properly convey the message and sort of understand where things are, I'm just that kind of person. I feel like I can't make a judgment on an individual or process without really meeting them. I've tried to be a face-to-face person. I think anybody in the Marlins organization that will tell you that you may have said, hey, I wonder if this is Craig Mish's source or not. Hey, did you ever meet him? Their answer is probably yes. You can very easily text somebody. You can very easily make a phone call. And believe me, that's the way that we operate in this day and age. But I've tried so much, very much, that if I know that somebody is 10, 15 miles away, 30 minutes away, and they want to take the time to meet me and speak to me, I'm going to take advantage of that. And going into the season, I can tell you that, be it as it may, I think Peter, I don't know, how much he would, admit publicly or whatever, but he thought going into the season that there was certainly a chance that the team could be competitive. I know that nobody wants to hear that. People think that he wanted to tear this thing down from day one. That is not the case. Anything that he has told me since he has been here from day one, he hasn't told me anything that I've found to be disingenuous, would be the word for it. Have things gone perfectly? No. Has he made mistakes along the line? Yes. We'll talk about some of those. But as far as the direction that he saw things would go, was this could potentially be a competitive team based on the team that was last year. Did he think Yuri Perez was going to be out for the season at the beginning of the season? No, he did not. Did he think that after signing Tim Anderson, he would play his last game ever with the Marlins and just being a complete bust? No, he did not. That was a mistake too. Did he think that maybe Avisail Garcia could have a bounce back and just reclaim some of the value that he had previously? Yes, he did. So like these are all, minor little mistakes along the way that any general manager would make. These general managers in baseball, guys, I mean, I do a sports betting show. Do you think that anybody in the world betting on humans is going to be right 7 or 8 times out of 10? This is not much different in baseball. You're trying to be right as much as you can, but inherently you're betting on people. You're going to be wrong a lot too. So he wanted to, incorporate the people that were already in the organization, give them a chance to have their opinion. Skip Schumacher's the manager of the year. Give him a chance to be competitive again. What was it a bad idea? Looking back on it now, maybe, because the team immediately showed they had no chance to be competitive. And I've always said, and I have said before to everybody, if you play for the middle in the NFL, in the NBA, in Major League Baseball and hockey, there's a chance you can play for that middle and you can be at the bottom. And that's exactly what happened here. Playing for the middle is not the way to go in sports. You either want to be great or you want to be bad. Unfortunately, that's what we live with. Being bad gets you the draft picks. Being great gets you to the playoffs. The Marlins tried to play for the middle, and they found themselves at the bottom. And that's kind of where Peter was. But the notion that he wanted to come in and tear the entire thing apart from the beginning, it's just not true.
And I think that begs the question, right? Obviously now, yesterday happened. We're retooling the organization. Peter has shown from that Tampa Bay sort of mentality, we need a farm system, right? And that was something that was the Marlins farm system was devoid. I think when this, especially when Kim Ng joined a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Peter now took over. Farm system needs a retooling. You mentioned yesterday in a tweet, the plan is coming into focus. Internally, do you think there is that optimism that Peter Bendix is building the farm system the correct way to contend maybe 2, 3 years, 4 years down the line?
Yeah, look, they're never going to put a timeline on this, and so I'm not going to either, because if we did that, then this last time that this all happened, 5, 6 years down the road, here we are, and they did get to the postseason last year, but I mean, I don't think it was a direct result of building the farm system. It was a direct result of making a couple of trades at the deadline and getting players to perform at their highest level in their history in Berger and Bell, and getting these incredible bullpen performances too. I mean, and a great manager too. I mean, everything had to align for last year. So I do think now it is more in focus because the players that have been acquired are all under the boss's watch. Like at this point, he's got the players that he believes are going to be part of the next wave, not knowing if all, some, or any are going to work out. But having people in place right now in the organization that have player development background, like Gabe Kapler, specifically one of their assistant GMs, someone that's being very heavily relied on, like their analytics department, which is being built, Sam Mondry-Cohen, who was part of that. I mean, these are names you don't hear a lot about, but guys, this is kind of how Tampa Bay is too. You didn't hear a lot about the names in Tampa Bay also. So fortunately for me, I sort of know what's going on here a little bit, so I can convey that. But this shows that this is the way that they want to do it. Will it work? We don't know. None of us know. Toad doesn't know. No,
Toad has strong opinions, but Toad doesn't know.
Javi doesn't know. I don't know. And that's another misnomer. People think that, when I say that things are going, they're going in the right direction, but I don't know that we're going to get to the finish line. Nobody knows. It's sports. The White Sox thought they would get to the finish line too. They're going to lose 120 games after having all that talent. But as far as the plan that he has to acquire minor league talent and some upside talent and to get the quantity of players into the organization to be developed the way that they have done it in Tampa Bay, that process has now begun.
So a lot of frustration from Marlins fans is seeing these types of trades go down before several times in their history, like we've already spoken about. But a part of that, the biggest part of the frustration, especially for me, is these pieces that they've gotten in the past have not panned out whatsoever. For the most part, they're missing at like a 90% clip. It feels like. I'm glad you mentioned the development staff. Can you maybe talk about them a little bit and their influence on these trades and maybe your confidence and your conversations with Bendix about what they're doing to get these young guys that they're getting in return to get them to a major league level that we'll see them playing and contributing as soon as possible?
It's a high level of failure. I don't know that it's 90% though. I do think that if we took time to go through it and think back, and I'll give you like the guy they just traded as an example, and Brian De La Cruz. Like again, the guys that they got, I have no idea if they're going to be good or not. And by the way, Brian De La Cruz is not a perennial all-star, but they acquired him for an expiring contract in Yimi Garcia. Yeah. And again, when we talk about the big trades, the Yelich and Ozuna, I mean, no one ever mentions Brian De La Cruz that they got for nothing, like literally nothing. And he ended up playing, and he's an everyday player. And I'm not saying it's something that anybody should get a trophy for, but that's what I'm saying is like, Toad, when you say 90%, I get it because it feels like that.
Right.
But when you sort of dive back in, it's like 70%. It's not as bad as it looks. And even with their drafting, it looks so like Andrew Nardi was drafted by the Marlins. He's going to be their closer. And again, I'm finding that like needle in the haystack kind of thing, but this is how organizations work in real life. And so not everything is just so black and white. There is this shade of gray. So as far as getting it going in the right direction, they're counting on Rachel Balkovic and they're counting on Gabe Kapler to spearhead how this is going to happen. Now, as far as how that happens, I'm glad you asked me that question because I don't know. I don't know how you recognize how to make JJ Bleday or Peyton Burdick or any of these guys better with their swing path or exit velocity or a computer sitting in front of you or bringing in Barry Bonds as a hitting coach. I have no clue. So Peter has to have the right people in place to be able to do that. And he's got to feel that with his success previously in the organizations that he's been part of, guys, I mean, you think about who he can lean on in his past. For things that we don't know about, we have to have expert opinions about it. I don't try to become an expert at breaking down the NHL, but I'll lean on somebody to tell me what they think. And that's the same as it goes for baseball. I played growing up, not like Javi, but I played at Cagny Park, and I tried to make my high school baseball team. They told me to go be the announcer instead. So that's the way that it works. But I think in the end, when you get to this sort of point that they're at, they have to have the right people in place. And that's why who has better friendships and relationships than Peter Bendix in this game? It's Andrew Friedman with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's David Stearns with the New York Mets. It's Chaim Bloom, who, by the way, did a good job with the Boston Red Sox. It's Eric Neander, who's running the Tampa Bay Rays. So I don't have his call logs, but if I did, I would probably guess that he's asking or has asked them questions as to, hey, like, give me some ideas as to the people that could really help me in this organization. Because he can't take the guys from Tampa Bay. That's not allowed. It's just, it doesn't happen in baseball. So I don't know that that's happening. Peter's never told me, hey, I called this person, and that's why I hired this. That he's never said to me. But I'm assuming that's what I would do if I was Peter Bendix. I would call Andrew Friedman, who's running the Dodgers, and say, hey, who do you think the best person for player development would be in this organization? And what would his answer be? Probably somebody who's working for them right now.
Right.
That's, I mean, it's hard to see. And I tell Toad all the time, and I was in the minor league. So there's just so many, the depth of the minor leagues is so vast, and you can get lost in prospects, and people try and grade these trades and analyze them piece for piece. And it's just a losing game. You got to give it time. And I think that's what sort of Bendix needs here the next 18, 24 months. Let's give the players that we traded for time. Let the development staff work and do their job.
Stour struck out 4 times today. It's over.
It's over. Let me hit the off button on my broadcast.
Toad texted me live during the game today saying Stour's 4Ks. I'm like, let's just pump the brakes.
So here's what you have to understand about the prospect game. First of all, you have to respect the people that are following it. Yeah. Because they're trying really hard and they want to succeed. I know a lot of these people, and it is a business. And that's my next part. This has become a business for a lot of these people. The people who are working, covering prospects, are making money doing this. They're hustling. It's their job. So whether they're right or wrong, I mean, guys, it's kind of irrelevant. You're dealing with human beings, but financially speaking, the amount of money that is being trickled down from that point all the way down is incredible. I mean, I'm seeing it now. I mean, Javi, you could certainly speak to this at the travel ball level. I mean, there are a million teams and a million coaches and this team and that team. My son, now he has to go play for this team because the coach doesn't want to be there. Then the next year, the players don't want to be there. And it's all financially based, and there's financial gain with all of this stuff. So if there was nothing financially to gain from the prospect game, from being able to analyze, you wouldn't be hearing nearly about this. We were not hearing about this sort of stuff 20 years ago. We were not. There were not rankings. There were not a million websites that are all ranking prospects. Good for them. I think it's awesome. But we also have to understand there's financial gain to it. People are clicking websites. They want to know, oh my gosh, who's in the farm system? Who's the next one up? Good for them. I would do the same thing if there was financial gain to it, but we also have to keep it real. When I grew up, there was just Little League. There was no travel ball. Why is there travel ball? Because of the amount of money that is out there. It's not like the teams are better, the kids are better. Nah, it's just a million teams. And we're going to get you to Pigeon Forge and Cooperstown and all this place. Believe me, I see it all.
Has your son tapped into the NIL money yet?
I mean, you know what? You never know, man. You never know with this stuff. I think look, he's going to try and play as long as he can, but we're not big people over here genetically. So we got a really strong, mental belief as to where this could or could not go. If he gets to play high school baseball, obviously that would be fantastic. But and my daughter's, go into the theater program, University of Central Florida, so she's got a great path. But imagine being my son in the car, listening to these conversations year after year and day after day. And, a lot of the times, he'll like come over and then look at text. He's not going to hurt anybody. He's a young kid. I mean, he probably will end up being somewhere like understanding the general manager or something in baseball. I really think he could head in that direction because he, at such a young age, he already knows exactly what's going on just from hearing me and listening to me. So we understand.
We're jealous.
I mean, we understand how difficult it is.
My dad forced me to listen to Joe Rose growing up. I did not hop on the GM path.
Joe's a good friend of mine too. All the old heads. Yeah.
Craig, speaking on yesterday, was there any trade in particular that really surprised you? I think Toad and I were talking about the Trevor Rogers move. Mm-hmm. Was that Jesus Luzardo? Was it supposed to be Luzardo in that trade instead of Trevor Rogers? How did that all go down in terms of Luzardo's injury changing the course of sort of Trevor Rogers' career as a Marlin?
Well, Baltimore, it looked like Baltimore is a little complicated. They're kind of in a position where their general manager, vice president, Mike Elias, is very different than a lot of the other general managers and vice presidents in baseball, in the sense that it appears to be, at the very least, that he's very stubborn, and that not that he's a prospect hugger, but he is very content winning 90 games every year and then getting to the postseason and seeing what happens. which honestly, guys, seems like a pretty good way to be.
Yeah.
I mean, the Diamondbacks and Rangers were in the World Series last year.
Right.
So kind of going all in for any team doesn't mean anything. Like what does it do? The fans give each other high fives that my owner and my team went all in, and then the next year they're tearing it down anyway. So I think that the Orioles are content with trying, but not willing to sacrifice a lot of the future for the present. So as you saw with the Corbin Burnes trade, they gave up several prospects, one who looks really good in Joey Ortiz.
Yeah.
And that would have been a player potentially going back to Miami in a deal with Jesus Luzardo. But since Luzardo got hurt, the Orioles certainly had to pivot. This was their pivot to Trevor Rogers. He's under team control, and Burnes could be gone in the offseason. Did they pay the price that would have been Luzardo at the time? I think it's a really interesting question to ask, because the way that Ortiz has, I'm maybe not as good as he was before, but the way that Ortiz has played, I mean, this player looks like an everyday player, potential all-star in Major League Baseball, third base or shortstop. That's at the major league level. We don't know about Norby and we don't know about Stowers yet. Now, maybe they're both going to be good. It appears that this was a really good trade for them. So I don't know that it's kind of apples and oranges to me, because I do think Luzardo is the better pitcher,
Right.
but he's not healthy. And really, and outside of like a year and a half, really hasn't been fully healthy. They got the Orioles in a good spot. Baltimore guys also knows, if you take a look at their prospect rankings, they got a lot more guys coming. They can't all play. They can't. Right. So Miami was in a really good situation to be able to make that move.
Yeah, we were certainly talking, just between us, it seemed like from just the outside, it seemed like a win for Peter Bendix there, right? You get two players in Stowers and Norby that are at least major league ready, guys you can plug into your lineup right now. And for the next, 60 or so games, figure out, are they going to be cornerstones of your rebuild, right? So again, we don't know that just yet, but it seemed like a good trade on the surface.
Everybody that I've talked to thus far in the industry is unified on that trade. There's really no deviation at all. Everyone thinks that's, and this is not Marlins. This is the people in the industry that I trust all say that was a good trade for the Marlins. I haven't gotten one bad one yet. Nobody has said, oh, maybe Norby won't be good, or maybe, Stowers won't be good. Everyone thinks that's a good trade for them.
We saw, obviously we're itching for stuff as the trade deadline creeped closer and closer. We're trying to figure out where the heck is Tanner Scott going, right? And that was the other big name that the Marlins were looking to move. Deadline hour, seemingly 5:00. We finally hits the presser. San Diego Padres trade for, Scott and Hoeing. In your opinion, was that the trade partner that was most involved all along with the Marlins? It seemed like the Padres farm system, not exactly as robust as it once was. Maybe, a year and a half, 2 years ago, they've made some massive trades to acquire talent. Was that the Padres sort of last stand? Was it Tanner Scott? Was that conversation? Were there other teams involved? I don't know how much you know or can divulge, but was it the Padres all along in it for Tanner Scott?
No, there were other teams, but I just think that a difference in desperation, I think, both from Baltimore and San Diego. I think Baltimore just kind of desperate to get a pitcher. San Diego desperate to win right now. There's just a ton of pressure on them to win this season, or there is speculation that a lot of changes could be made at the end of the year. So the farm system for San Diego has been unloaded. To be transparent on that deal, while I knew Scott was going to get traded, I did not know that the final team there was going to be San Diego until it happened right there. But if you've noticed something about all of the trades that the Marlins made, which is a little bit surprising, is that without a doubt, GM's told me, and I talked about this in the Herald, the people that I've spoken to, the Marlins very clearly were after quantity over quality. I mean, that's obvious, because they could have done some deals maybe with San Diego or other teams and said, hey, instead of giving us 4, give us 1, give us your best. They really wanted to get more prospects into the system. Now, I don't know, maybe that's Peter thinking, I'm guessing here, I don't know this for a fact, that, hey, the more we have, the better shot we have that we hit on these guys. Instead of getting 15, and we could have gotten 6 or 7, and our chances are less. Again, dealing with human beings, maybe having 15 gives you a 50-50 shot. If we hit on 8, your percentages are higher of success the more prospects you have in your system. That's not always the case. You can get 4 players for Christian Yelich and none can be good. So it's not a guarantee that that's the case. But it does seem as though this process was part of quantity.
The last trade, I think, in terms of specifics, we'll talk about is we're going to go back, right? So I think early May, Luis Arraez gets traded. What did you make about the timing of that trade, Craig? Because I think, obviously we hadn't seen really any activity in terms of movement of players at that point in the season. Marlins sort of made the first move. They moved Luis Arraez, which one of our top 3 players, most recognizable faces of the team at that time. Mm-hmm. What did you make about the timing of that trade?
Yeah, I think that the preference would have been, like we talked about, if you had to go back and look at it, would have been to trade him at the beginning of the season. And the same thing with Luzardo, and just kind of do what they did back in January or February. That would have been the preferable way to go about it. But you're a brand new executive coming into a situation where you're being told the team is competitive. They made the postseason last year. Just Jorge Soler is gone. Maybe Berger and Bell for a full season ends up working out. Let's just give this a shot. I think that was a mistake. I think that clearly Arraez should have been traded before the season began. They probably could have gotten more for him at the time, but when they did the deal, there was not going to be an optimal time ever. And I suppose, again, not knowing for sure, that they just kind of felt that what if Luis Arraez hits 286 with 2 home runs? What are they going to get for this guy at the end of the season? And I mentioned this on social media too, after speaking to, again, people in the industry. Luis Arraez hitting 300 or 305 with 2 home runs or 3 home runs and 40 RBIs with a 330 on base. I mean, guys, that is not a $15-16 million player. So the Padres or whoever else would have to take a serious look at that and say, are we willing to do this? Are we going to give this person a 1-year contract off that? I know it sounds insane, but this is how Major League Baseball teams operate. They operate on asset value and statistics and WAR and WRC. And Arraez has picked it up since. I would anticipate him being back with the Padres for that final season. But the Twins traded him. The Marlins traded him. He's still on the Padres. And, Javi, I like Luis Arraez a lot. He's a great guy, and he's the best at what he does very specifically. But I think in the end, you have to agree that he's a very hard player to determine what he's worth.
Yeah, look, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? With a team that doesn't necessarily have the pieces around him, we're not at a place to pay that clip, right, for a guy like Arraez. It takes too much.
Who is?
Right.
Who is?
No, I know.
Javi, if he hits 305 with 3 home runs or 4 home runs and 40 RBIs and a 330 on base, how many teams in a free agent market would pay that player $15 million?
You're right. No, it's
if that's the case, with the Yankees, sure. With the Phillies, yes. With the Red Sox, yes. But that's not the entire league. So again, it's just a really hard dynamic to figure out. Again, I'm going to guess at the end of the season, in his final year of arbitration, the Padres and Arraez will come to an agreement on that 1-year deal. I believe so. But the fact that we're even having this conversation leads you to understand why the Marlins thought, hey, if we don't do this now and the bottom hits, we are stuck.
Yeah,
and we'll get nothing.
I think one trade we all hated to see as Marlins fans yesterday, maybe the for the fan base as a whole, was definitely Jazz going to the Evil Empire, to the Yankees, and especially the historic start that he's on, the first Yankees player to ever hit 4 home runs in his first 3 games with the team, is leaving a very bitter taste in our mouths, to say the least.
I understand.
Toad bought a jersey. He bought a Yankees 13 Chisholm jersey. Yeah,
I did.
We were watching the game last night, Craig, and we saw both home runs, and Toad impulse buy. I mean, just absolutely got him. It was hook, line, and sinker.
So what's the question?
Who are the top teams interested in Jazz?
That. I had in the Herald. I mean, I don't know exactly who came down to the wire. I'll probably know in the next few days, but the Royals definitely were one team that was pretty interested in Jazz.
And was it going into the trade deadline, how certain were you that they were going to flip him?
Certain. I was the one that reported that first.
That crushed Toad right there. That crushed him. That was a kill
shot. I thought I was the one like a month ago that said that, or like 3 weeks ago that said that. I used growing belief because you never know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, hey, you never know with these reports because you have to sift through what's smoke screens from agents and GMs and what's real. Kind of like that.
I follow you. I'm pretty accurate though.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Better than 90%.
Well, maybe I don't know if that's true or not. But I stopped doing rumors because it just doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
But no, I look, did I think 100%? No, I thought there was one point along the line about a week ago that maybe there was a small percentage chance he would come back. But no, I think that they were intent on moving him.
And a few months into the season 2 this year, the reports started circulating, bubbling up about Skip basically just being a lame duck manager.
Yep.
Is that set in stone too? Is there any chance if the team miraculously, I mean, they're playing okay now. If they continue to play well, is there any chance, any possibility that he comes back, or are we really just is Skip?
What do you want me to put a percentage on this one?
You tell us, Craig.
Very low, very low, very low.
That's tough to hear. I mean, obviously, NL Manager of the Year last year.
Anything can change. I have not gotten any indication that he would. I guess he could come. I just feel like the season's going to end. He'll end up meeting with Peter Bendix. They'll shake hands, hug it out, and wish each other well. And then Peter will hire his own manager. That's my guess.
Makes sense.
Fair
Checks
enough.
out. And I guess our last question, Craig, this has been awesome. It's been a true joy to have you on. Outlook for the next, couple of months as Marlins fans, what can we expect in terms of, I know we're going to see a lot of young faces. We're going to see a lot of guys we haven't seen all year long play. But in terms of building momentum into next year, what are the biggest things you're looking for out of this club?
Yeah, so I think if I had to guess some of this stuff, I think you got to brace for August here a little bit, because I don't know that you're going to see all of these kids at once up here. They're brand new to the organization. I think some of them are going to have some minor league time. Figure some things out, figure out what's working for them, what the organization likes, what they don't like. So I'm a little, I got to kind of keep it real that I think a really tough August could be in line for the major league team. But I think that once we get to September and they're able to call up a couple of more players and add to the roster, I do think that at that point you'll see Connor Norby come up and you'll see him play third base. You're already seeing Stowers play the outfield. I do think De Los Santos will come up. You'll see him play first base at the end of the season too. So maybe I'll be wrong and they'll call these guys up earlier, but I think August could be a transitional type month for them. I don't know how much time these kids are going to spend in the big leagues, but I think toward the end of the year, it would make perfect sense for them to call all those players up, and maybe even some players in their system now that we haven't seen, like Troy Johnston and Griffin Conine. I think we could see both of them come up this season. So I know that doesn't get everybody super excited, but as you asked, that's the answer. As I think next month, as we turn the page to September, it would honestly be foolish if they didn't take a good look at these guys. So I think they will.
Yeah, you got a free trial period with a lot of these guys and see what you got. And you got an opportunity to do it right away, which I think is intriguing for Marlins fans. Maybe not what you want to hear, but the baseball nerd, the minor leaguer in me is probably, if I was in the Marlins organization, I'd be jacked up if I was in AA and AAA right now, because you got
that's where you want to be.
And that's where you want to be. That's the best place on earth, is on a struggling major league team, right?
I mean, next year you want to be with the White Sox probably. but right now, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to be had out there. I mean, Jazz Chisholm Jr. was your center fielder, and Brian De La Cruz was your left fielder, and Tim Anderson was your shortstop. Luis Arraez was your second baseman, and Josh Bell was your first baseman, and Betancourt was your catcher. Like, you're right, Javi. If you're in the minor leagues, you just saw 7 or 8 guys from 2 months ago gone. So you would think that even if you are not the guy up, you are the next man up. I agree with you 100%. Minor leaguers in the Marlins system, if they're looking to play, this is the place to be right now.
The highway is clear and you're clear for takeoff.
And it's an opportunity for the franchise to sell some more Conine jerseys too.
There you go. There you go.
Some fresh ones.
I hope they do that. That'll be that may be the best day in the season left when they do that day.
That'll be really cool.
That'd be great for everyone. Yeah, I think.
Agreed.
That was awesome, Craig. We can't thank you enough for coming on with us. You always have a home with the Mafia. We are huge Marlins fans and big Craig Mish fans, so we appreciate you coming on and imparting your wisdom on us and our listeners.
Yeah, listen, when I started in this business many years ago, the one thing that I've always been waiting for is somebody to say to me, "You're always at home with the Mafia."
You can put that on a shirt, Craig. That's your Twitter, your X tagline. You're home with the Mafia. There you go.
Thanks a lot, Craig.
Thanks for having me.